All right, you and I are watching Nicholas Thorne sprint through a lava pit at level 8,150. With S-rank stats maxed out, he charges toward a massive horde of monsters swarming the glowing battlefield. He unsheathes his blade and cleaves through the beasts in one motion. Slicing through them, he sees a massive dragon looming ahead. He shouts for support, and a mysterious girl tells him to leave this sector in her hands. She summons a massive water serpent, wiping out entire rows of enemies. Nicholas gives her his thanks, but she just brushes it off casually. Suddenly, an elite beast strikes from the sky. Nicholas reacts instantly, cutting it down before pivoting to block more attacks coming from every single direction. He keeps carving a path through the monsters, but then, a voice calls him out for being too slow. A legendary swordswoman steps in to block a lethal blow meant for him. She tells him to keep moving while she handles this. He nods, trusting her strength completely before dashing deeper into the chaos. Now pay attention. As he looks back, Nicholas remembers the woman who inspired him to join the Iron Vaults. Ever since he was a boy, the city was filled with these brave heroes known as the Dungeon Explorers. These knights were the kingdom's lifeblood, facing deadly monsters and lethal traps to keep the city safe every day. They formed guilds and took on dangerous quests issued directly by the High Council's Grand Explorer Association. Clearing these dark pits allowed them to harvest rare loot and trade valuable artifacts for massive profits. Mapping uncharted territory was the key to glory, bringing them one step closer to becoming the most legendary figures in history. They worked tirelessly, day and night, to conquer every floor. Climbing the ranks meant unlimited wealth and fame beyond their wildest dreams. But for our hero, his journey started way back on the very first floor. Back then, Nicholas was just a lowly rookie. To rank up, you needed to show the association some real results. More importantly, you needed massive stats. The only way to get those, slaying monsters to level up. Nicholas was stuck at level 100 as a measly D-rank knight. He tried boosting his power through basic magic and sword skills. He believed that hard work and dedication would eventually lead him to the top. He dreamed of ranking up, but at the start, his D-rank stats were barely enough to survive, mostly focusing on basic water spells. You and I can see his frustration, knowing he can't afford to waste a single second here. He activated his only special ability, a support skill he called Surveyor's Sight. This allowed him to scan everything within 30 meters, checking the terrain and the structure of the dungeon walls. The magic levels were average, but he noticed several weak points hidden in the stone floor. With this, he could disarm traps or fix unstable ground on the lower levels, even if he was all alone. For the high-ranking elites, this kind of grunt work was beneath them. They didn't even care. But even though others mocked him for doing the dirty work, Nicholas truly believed that his skills could save someone's life. Deep in the city's poorest slums, he remembered crying as a child, wondering if he would survive. He couldn't understand why anyone would help a peasant like him, since there was absolutely no profit in it. But the girl just turned and gave him a smile. She told him that helping others makes the world look brighter. Lady Alara was the one who changed his life. Without her, he wouldn't be here today. He wondered if she would even recognize him after all this time. Suddenly, a group of arrogant nobles and their female followers approached him with a mocking laugh. Their leader laughed, calling him a chosen one for hitting level 100. The girls whispered about him being that famous loser. Sebastian Vance used his appraisal skill, confirming that Nicholas really was stuck at level 100. Sebastian was only level 45, yet he already held a superior B-rank title. The girls burst out laughing, calling him a weakling despite his high level. Even a B-rank like her could crush him. Nicholas stayed silent, then told Sebastian that if he focused on his own team's arrogance instead of mocking others, their Hydra subjugation squad might actually do some decent damage for once. This insult enraged Sebastian. He used a crushing skill to slam Nicholas into the dirt. He spat that even if they grew up together, Nicholas was still a pathetic failure who had no right to give advice. And trust me, you and I will watch them regret this. All right, you and I are about to see what happens when a weak rank D knight challenges a monster. Cedric wanted Alaric to stop acting like they were equals because it honestly disgusted him. They now had proof that Alaric's level 100 rank was a total sham with no real power. Normally, when a knight reached level 100, you would expect high-rank magic and master-level skills. But for Alaric, his growth completely stalled at the intermediate stage despite how fast he leveled up. Unfortunately, his physical stats like attack and defense had been frozen since level 30. Even now, poor Alaric was still stuck at level 100. He had no idea why this was happening or how to break the curse. He just wanted to stand beside Lady Alara, the girl who inspired him. She was the only reason he became a knight. He wondered what the point of leveling up was if it didn't make him any stronger. This gap between level and power was just going too far. What he was suffering through right now was unbearable. Watching this pathetic display, Cedric could only laugh at his miserable attempts to fight back. Alaric used to rely so much on that false hope, thinking he was actually becoming someone great. Cedric asked what Lady Alara would say if she could see him in this sad, fragile state. He shouldn't have cared, but knowing Alara didn't even acknowledge his existence made Alaric's blood boil with rage. While pinning Alaric down, Cedric reached out and snatched the bag the boy was carrying. Our hero shouted for him to give it back, but Cedric knew it was a special pendant from Lady Alara. Cedric mocked him, asking if he really planned to keep a lucky charm given out of pity for such a weakling. Then he saw that the charm had been repaired multiple times, even after being torn. Alaric clearly valued it more than his own life. Cedric just shredded the charm and shoved it in his mouth since it was useless. After spitting it out on the floor, Cedric stomped it into the dirt, fueling Alaric's fury. But Cedric just kept him pinned with his heavy gravity magic. Now pay attention here. This is where the humiliation gets even worse. Cedric laughed because he knew Alaric was desperate for recognition, yet he remained completely and utterly pathetic. Alaric hadn't gained an ounce of strength since they were kids and was still a total embarrassment to the order. Maybe it was finally time for him to give up on life and just die. Alaric struggled with all his might, reaching his hand toward Cedric to try and break the spell. Cedric laughed at the resistance and mockingly reminded him that accidental deaths inside a dungeon are barely ever investigated according to the official Imperial Guild regulations. The Imperial Order would just do its routine paperwork, and the body would never be searched for again. That is just the cold reality of how this world works. He could easily report that Alaric died a hero, shielding Cedric from a monster before meeting his end. As a final memory, Cedric, his dear childhood friend, would return his bag and the lucky charm. Something like that. You and I both know exactly what he's planning. Cedric intended to personally deliver the bag to Lady Alara just to see her reaction to the news. While she would obviously be devastated, Cedric would use the chance to comfort her and pull her into his arms. He would tell Alara that he was there for her now, so she wouldn't have to cry over a useless death. Alaric told him to stop his twisted provocation, but Cedric just increased the pressure of his high-gravity punishment to keep him crushed against the stones. He slammed the boy hard into the ground and asked what Alaric thought of his peak-level magic. It was terrifyingly strong. It would turn Alaric into nothing more than shredded waste with no hope of recovery. He unleashed the gravity spell again and again. Alaric's body was covered in blood and injuries, while the girls nearby worried the entire floor was about to cave in. Cedric just laughed because the boy was so fragile and decided it was finally time to abandon him in that state. Cedric said his final goodbye, promising to take care of Alara as Alaric screamed for him to stop. But Cedric just walked away without a hint of remorse, leaving Alaric behind to curse his own pathetic weakness. Suddenly, the ground gave way under Cedric's power and Alaric fell, plummeting deep into the dark abyss. At this rate, Lady Alara would really end up trapped by Cedric's side. Alaric begged for the power to defeat him, but he was completely helpless as he fell. He wanted to become stronger than anyone, but there was absolutely nothing he could do. And that's where we leave it, just as his system activates an analysis skill, calculating his certain death in 20 seconds. There was simply no escaping the fatal fall. All right, we are watching a hero face 100% death rate. Surviving the fall was impossible. Alaric wondered why his trash tier skill was suddenly going haywire. Long ago, he tried to close the gap between him and Lady Alara. But this useless skill was his only reward after years of struggle. Analysis skills are useless in a real fight. It is basically a death sentence. Alaric felt worthless, especially since the other knights loved throwing his lack of talent in his face every single day. The system suddenly spammed messages, confirming his death and running calculations until his unique skill finally evolved. With a unique death count active, his stats reset, granting 1 million bonus experience as Alaric finally broke his limits. Alaric woke up with a scream, gasping for air when he realized he was actually alive despite that massive drop. He looked up, stunned by the height of the cliff he just fell from. Now pay attention, Alaric should be dead, but his fury toward Lord Silas, the traitor who pushed him, burned bright enough to keep him breathing against all odds. He was used to the mocking whispers at court, but this betrayal was a step way too far. Alaric spotted his lucky charm nearby and realized the truth. He had to find Lady Alara and confront Silas immediately before things in the kingdom got even worse. But as he was now, he wouldn't stand a chance in a real duel. Looking around, Alaric realized he was in uncharted territory. He couldn't afford to be pessimistic now, he just needed to find a way out of this hole. Looking at his hands, he realized something about this situation was incredibly strange. There was zero pain, no broken bones, no scars, nothing. Confused, he pulled up his status window to check his vitals. His stats had literally doubled since his supposed death. There wasn't a single trace of an injury on his entire body. His heart stopped when he saw his level had jumped to 101. He never dreamed he could surpass that limit, but here he was, breaking every rule. Still, Alaric wondered if these stats were a mistake. Could this power actually be some kind of dark, twisted curse? Lost in thought, he didn't see the monster stalking him from the shadows, ready to tear him apart from behind. Alaric dodged just in time, drawing his sword to slash the beast. But looking closer, he realized this wasn't just some common, low-rank monster from the upper floors. His limbs felt impossibly light. For some reason, the sword in his hand felt like a natural extension of his arm. Alaric felt a sharp, sudden sting and wondered if he'd actually taken a hit during that frantic exchange. A loud roar echoed through the cave, making the young knight jump in surprise. It sounded like a massive hound's roar. He had no idea which floor of the abyss he'd actually landed on. Kobolds haunt the second floor, while shadow wolves on the third. But this roar sounded far more dangerous than both combined. You and I both know something big is coming. A massive explosion suddenly rocked the tunnel behind him, and when Alaric turned around, he saw a nightmare he never expected. A two-headed beast was spitting fire. It was the legendary 𝒆𝒔. Alaric knew this beast could easily slaughter even rank, veteran knights, without breaking a sweat. Backed into a dead end, he finally realized Silas had intentionally dropped him into this hellhole. He couldn't believe his own childhood friend would be capable of such cruelty. But Alaric had someone to protect. He would never forgive those who used lies and violence to hurt the people he loved. He couldn't leave Alara alone with a snake like Silas. He had to survive and escape this pit before it was too late. The beast lunged forward to strike. Alaric triggered his enhancement skill, feeling the power surge through his veins. He activated his reinforcement, gaining resistance against fire, water, wind, and even the primal forces of light and shadow. If these new stats were real, Alaric finally had a chance to stand his ground and fight for his life. He charged the monster head-on. Meanwhile, a mysterious girl with bat wings watched him from the shadows, resembling Lady Alara. She looked worried for him as she vanished. Alaric didn't notice, focusing everything on bracing his body for the coming impact. His fortification skill held strong, level 100, and one was the real deal. His defensive power had completely doubled. Without this massive stat boost, those flames would have turned him into a pile of ash in seconds. Using his appraisal skill, the system timer began counting down. Alaric still couldn't believe he'd actually reached level 100. Was it courage? Determination? He knew there had to be more to this sudden evolution than just simple hard work. One thing was certain: Alaric could finally face the monsters of this world and survive the encounter. All those years of being weak and observing monster patterns from the sidelines were finally paying off in spades. Trust me, you and I now see that every monster has a pattern and clear weaknesses. You and I are about to watch 𝒂𝒐𝒍� predict every move. Against this beast, waiting around meant certain death. The beast lunged. 𝒂𝒐𝒍💔 readied his blade, swung with precision, and 36 seconds later, it was all over. As the timer hit 0, 𝒂𝒂𝒍💔 could hardly believe he had finished it that fast. A stubborn beast, for sure. Timing those strikes while enduring its sheer force was exhausting. Even with just his basic iron skin skill, he felt surprisingly powerful. It was exactly what he needed for this fight. Things started simple enough, but this time, the rules of the dungeon were changing. With his strength doubled, 𝒂𝒂𝒍💔 did not even need iron skin to crush his enemies. If his passive heat resistance had not kicked in, he would have been roasted alive right there. Suddenly, a roar shook the cavern. The beast was back for more, lunging with a fury that suggested it was far from dead. It nearly swallowed him whole, but 𝒂𝒂𝒍💔 used that proximity to drive his blade straight through its gaping maw. The system chimed, confirming the kill, and 𝒂𝒂𝒍💔 felt a surge of power as his levels began to climb. Now pay attention. 1 second of hesitation against a hellhound would have meant his head. A new skill notification appeared, but the system interface started glitching out. 𝒂𝒂𝒍💔 stared, wondering what was going on. The skill was called True Sight. It allowed him to strip away illusions and see any target's actual nature. He was confused. This looked like a basic ability that rookie squires usually picked up on their first day. Why was he only getting this now? He shrugged and decided to give it a shot, activating True Sight for the first time. Comparing his power to the hellhound's, it felt like he had finally stepped into a completely different league. Sir Cedric had claimed that 𝒂𝒂𝒍💔 was the only one destined to die here. He likely fed Lady Alara a pack of lies about everything that happened in the dungeon. 𝒂𝒂𝒍💔 needed to move fast, but a sharp, localized pain flared up in his chest again. What was this strange sensation? Suddenly, the data updated, and he realized the situation was far worse than he thought. That massive hellhound, it was actually just a young juvenile. If that was just a baby, then 𝒂𝒂𝒍💔 must have tumbled all the way down to the 5th floor. He figured heading downstream might lead to a safe zone, but the path was crawling with more deadly creatures. Turning back, a wave of pure bloodlust washed over him. Was something coming through that entrance behind him? You and I can see he is in real trouble. If he does not move, he is dead meat. Before he could react, the floor gave way. He was falling straight into a trap. 𝒂𝒂𝒍💔 could not believe his luck. Activating divine calculus, the system began tracking the exact flight path and arrival time of every arrow soaring toward his head. Looking at those numbers, he had to move. Right then, a crimson alert flashed. A high-level monster was closing in on his position at high speed. He quickly checked his divine oracle. Why were there so many warnings screaming at him all at once? Something big was definitely going down. Analysis complete. Enemy detected 120 meters away. A massive beast type with a lethal fire attribute. The system crunched the stats. To reach the next level, he needed 1,500,000 experience points. The math was simple. He needed way more experience. 3 more minutes ticked away in that dark tunnel. Suddenly, a massive flood of analytical data hit his brain. 𝒂𝒂𝒍💔 gripped his head, overwhelmed by the sheer amount of information. He spun around just in time to hear a low, guttural growl from a new monster looming behind him. It spat a torrent of flames, forcing Alistair to dive into the icy water. He surfaced safely, gaining even more points. He was stunned. He never thought the system would reward him just for surviving a near-death plunge. One look with true sight confirmed it. This was an adult hellhound. Unlike the pup, this beast was pure power. Alistair threw himself to the side, barely avoiding its massive jaws. With every attack he successfully dodged. His points total kept rising, but Alistair knew his luck was running out. He could not keep this up forever. Things were getting desperate, so Alistair checked the latest system update to see his new point total. He still did not fully understand these evaluation points, but his current stats were nowhere near enough to win. He was trapped. At this pace, he would simply drop from exhaustion before the beast even touched him. 3 minutes passed. Let's see what happens next. His points doubled, his divine sense evolved, and a flood of new skills arrived. Stick with me, because Nicholas just witnessed his experience points skyrocket toward a first-class rank. He banked 1,500,000 points in a single fight, instantly jumping 50 levels. Nicholas was completely lost because this sudden surge in power made no sense. Even though the shadow drake fell, the experience seemed broken beyond belief, but he had to focus. Suddenly, a haunting laugh echoed, a warning that killing the beast's cub had consequences. The mother drake was absolutely furious, launching a relentless assault on him. Nicholas wondered where that strange voice was coming from inside his mind, as a woman's presence invaded his thoughts, telling him that everything was entirely his fault and could not have been avoided. He spun around, demanding to know who she was. But she just yawned, telling him to survive this mess on his own. Nicholas couldn't believe this stranger was interfering, with his thoughts right in the heat of battle. Despite the confusion, he pushed forward and activated his divine speed to dodge the next strike. Pay attention here, because this is where the system starts breaking every established rule of magic. As more points flooded in, he realized those incoming dragon flames were lethal. Even with his body fortified by Knight's magic, he wouldn't survive a direct hit from that. At his current tier, a single spark would melt him into nothingness instantly. He invoked his water magic to strike his opponent, firing a high-pressure stream without much effort which hit the monster as the system added even more points. Nicholas wondered if basic magic was supposed to be this devastatingly powerful. The attack transformed, and a massive water dragon erupted from his shimmering magic circle. He didn't understand the mechanics, but he used the torrent to stay alive. Nicholas kept the pressure on until his magic pierced straight through the monster's heart. It was a massive critical hit, and his points tallied up as the beast finally collapsed. Yet, even with its heart destroyed, the monster was still somehow drawing breath. The vitality within that creature's body was nothing short of legendary. Nicholas delivered one final sword strike, and the drake was officially declared annihilated. Every calculation pushed him higher, until he officially reached the elite first-class rank. So, he received a massive amount of points, totaling 9 million. Nicholas increased to 300 levels thanks to that, and acquired advanced magic for all 4 of his elemental attributes. He finally realized his appraisal skill could now analyze objects, and even time itself to the maximum. You and I both know what happens when an MC gets a god-tier skill: total chaos. His experience requirements were constantly being updated with terrifying efficiency. The efficiency of his growth was successfully maximized, granting points based on the massive level gap between him and his foes, along with his actions during the battle. His experience gain was now fueled by everything his eyes could analyze. He had unlocked a god-rank skill that made gathering power look easy. This absurd amount of experience was meant to be able to acquire around 100 points. It truly wasn't luck that got him to level 100. Without divine appraisal, he never would have grasped the true depth of his potential. Now, he could finally shatter his limits and become stronger than any knight in history. He stood up, determined to level up until he could stop Lord Cedric personally. But even this power wasn't enough to face the truly ancient horrors. To survive the abyss and defeat Cedric, he needed an even more absurd level of strength. Thinking of Lady Genevieve, Nicholas gripped his lucky charm and vowed to keep climbing. For now, he needed to master his new appraisal skills outside the rift. Meanwhile, the mysterious girl smiled as she watched her little pet get slaughtered. She had to admit, seeing him finally awaken his true power took some serious courage. Back at the manor, Genevieve heard a shocking announcement coming directly from the Royal Order's headquarters. And trust me, this is huge. They just announced that the 4th-class Knight Nicholas has passed away. Stick with me. Alara's world shatters as the town crier delivers news she never thought she would hear. According to the report brought by Silas Thorn, Alaric's body was torn apart, leaving only his satchel and a few bloodied trinkets behind. Alara blamed herself, wishing she had stopped him from becoming a knight of the realm, desperately praying that he was somehow still alive. Wiping her tears, she hears a sudden knock at the manor door. Standing there is Silas, a man she hasn't seen since the war began, offering a grim greeting. Alara stares him down, demanding to know his true business. Silas claims he was just passing through and saw a chance to help, slowly revealing Alaric's tattered leather satchel to her. He offers it as a final memento, and Alara instantly recognizes the crest on the worn leather as Alaric's own. Now watch closely, because as Alara opens the door in grief, Silas flashes a grin. His trap is finally set. Alara lunges forward to grab her friend's last remains. But Silas smirks, casting a heavy gravity spell that drags her inside before slamming the heavy door shut. He laughs like a madman, mocking her struggle as the crushing pressure of his magic pins her helplessly to the stone floor. Alara demands an explanation, but her strength is gone. As Silas reaches out with a fake concern, she strikes his hand away, fueling his twisted amusement even further. As a knight who conquered the 12th circle, her indomitable spirit clearly outshines any common lady in this kingdom. Slowly, she fights to stand, pushing against his dark magic while Silas taunts her, asking if Alaric's sudden death still burns in her heart. She realizes Silas has completely lost his mind, while he grows frustrated that her noble mental fortress is still stubbornly resisting his dark and twisted hypnosis. Even so, Silas knows she is now a defenseless target. Alara asks why he is doing this, but Silas just sneers, violently stomping his boot onto Alaric's bloodied satchel. He confesses he hated watching that weak, kind-hearted fool for years, especially since Alaric always looked right past someone as ambitious as Silas. And seeing Alaric's joy grow only fueled Silas's burning envy. You and I both know Silas is insane, wanting Alaric to suffer in ways that would break any normal man's soul into pieces. Now that Alaric is dead, Silas cackles at his easy victory. He admits he loves feeding on the pure misery of others, leaving Alara chilled to the bone. Through her tears, she spits out that he is nothing but a deranged monster who has lost his humanity. Silas only smiles, intensifying his heavy magic to crush her further, claiming such insults are terribly rude for a noble lady. He claims to be sane, telling the beautiful A-rank knight she shouldn't ruin her perfect reputation with such vulgar words in front of her many admirers. Alaric would surely be heartbroken in the afterlife if he could witness his precious Alara in this state. Alara can't fathom why he would go to such dark lengths just to spite Alaric. Silas sighs, bored of her endless questions. Then, he doubles the weight of his crushing gravity spell. Elsewhere, Alaric turns to find a new horror rising, and his all-seeing sight fails to reveal the true name of this beast. A woman's voice echoes, mocking how humans always rush to expose every secret about the enemies they face in battle. She suffered for that mistake once, so she made sure to prepare a lethal surprise for him this time. Alaric wonders if the previous beast he fought had already slaughtered other knights before his arrival. It was a sea drake capable of human speech, possessing strange powers that his divine insight simply could not fathom. The creature claims she only wants to talk, asking Alaric why he remains so silent while death looms over him like this. One-sided talk achieves nothing. A true warrior must be silent and strong, yet keep a dignified and imposing presence at all times. Alaric retorts that, for a terrifying monster, she seems like the type who never knows when to shut her mouth. She asks if he is mocking her, and Alaric hesitates, even though he knows his words are absolutely true. Irritated, she closes the distance, realizing she could end this mere human's life in a single heartbeat if he continues his insolent behavior. The Lady of the Mist sneers that defeating her pet hound doesn't give him the right to be so arrogant. Alaric activates his physical fortification magic, knowing he must at least maintain a powerful appearance to survive. Deep down, he knows a single chance at victory still remains. Trust me, you and I are about to see if his divine insight can help him evolve and grow stronger before his time finally runs out. You and I are about to see Alaric face an impossible god-tier monster. Alaric prepared his move. He'd use fire to blind the beast, then strike hard with a truly devastating direct sword slash. He unleashes a flame spell for a direct hit, but the monster just watches his gathering power with curiosity. Now Alaric casts the frantic dance of embers, summoning a great phoenix to tear through the dungeon's peace. The beast dodges easily and laughs. This is its kingdom, and it knows the terrain better than any human ever could. His victory over the Hellhound earlier only happened because of his hidden power. As a penalty, it seized control of his magic and snuffed it out like a candle. Alaric realized too late he'd never seen magic control like this. The girl mocked him, noticing his utter lack of knowledge. Annihilation tier magic was something completely new, and Alaric wondered if she was even reading his mind. But Annihilation tier meant her magic was at a level far higher than anything he had ever imagined. She explains that there are two ranks sitting above Advanced, the Mythic class and the absolute peak of magic, Annihilation. To simply cancel out his spells, a truly superior grade of magic was absolutely required. Alaric realizes she's actually teaching him, but she just scoffs. At his current power level, he isn't even a threat. If he really wanted to challenge her. Pay attention here. He needs a power level of 4,000 just to even stand a chance against her. Those numbers were staggering. He quickly checked his status window and saw his level was only at 452. Alaric saw his stats climbing high enough to slay an elite hellhound, but this woman was different. She was on a whole other tier entirely, and Alaric desperately wondered who this creature really was. He forced himself to stop and think, searching for anything he could use. She mentioned her past suffering and the need for precautions. It all began with the rise of the Serpent King, 𝑭𝒂𝒔. In recent years, 𝑭𝒂𝒔 had been escaping the dungeons and raiding cities, a dragon-type beast of the highest calamity rank. Its strength and fire were legendary, to the point that even the most elite knights were being crushed. The Knights Guild began desperate recruitment for a Serpent King subjugation team to turn the tide of the battle and save the realm. A few weaknesses were finally found, so they switched to a total offensive. Even then, they still couldn't bring the Great Serpent down in the end. There was a high chance this girl was actually 𝑭𝒂𝒔. If so, Alaric didn't stand a single chance in a fight. You and I are probably thinking he's done for, but Alaric is already desperately searching for any possible way to escape alive. He had to find a way to keep her talking while he planned his next move. Alaric asked why she was bothering with a novice like him. She replied that it was nothing but pure curiosity. She wondered how a weakling like him had somehow managed to steal a portion of her ancient power. That was the only reason she was even willing to speak with a human. Suddenly, a hand reached through a magic circle offering an item. Alaric stared in shock. Where did she get that? She calmly replied it was taken from human travelers. When she lashed out her tails, she simply reclaimed those items for her own collection. Alaric wondered if others like her were out there, causing this much chaos in the world. From her tone, he realized the owner of that hand inside the portal was the true body of the Serpent King. 𝑭𝒂𝒔 noted his silence and asked if he was quiet because of ignorance or because he was hiding something. Alaric knew 4,000 power was the minimum to survive this. At least, That is what she claimed. He couldn't win as he was, but he decided to gamble everything on his skill. Trial of the gods. The skill activated, analyzing his target's level and searching for any possible strategy within his reach. Alaric realized he could use this information to finally find a way out of this nightmare. The system finished its analysis, concluding that exactly 25 million experience points were required to reach his next level. 𝒂𝒔 was stunned when Alaric suddenly charged, using his own power against her. He ripped her hand right out of the magic circle, destroying her arm as she screamed in agony. The appraisal was complete. He hit level 2,200, and trust me, you're going to want to see what happens next. All right, you and I are watching a knight gain a power that defies all logic. Those numbers were completely absurd. It was a skill so broken, it was hard to even believe, but he had successfully acquired the peerless physical augmentation ability. Nicholas chose to trust the optimized action suggested by the divine trial, and decided to sever her arm once the analysis was fully completed. It was a truly terrifying power. Even Lady Morana was shocked that a mere human could tap into a level of strength this absolute. She was absolutely furious that a surprise attack from a mere mortal had managed to cause this much physical damage to her body. Nicholas apologized but refused to waste another second. He had to hunt down Sebastian before it was too late. He knew an elite knight like Lady Alina, at rank Alpha, was powerful enough that Sebastian shouldn't have been able to defeat her. But hold on, Nicholas had a gut feeling that something was wrong, and we need to watch this closely. Morana could tell his mind was racing, with 1,000 different thoughts. She wasn't just going to stand there and watch. After losing her arm, she decided right then and there that she would kill him personally once and for all. The Serpent Queen used her words to distract him until her true form could arrive. She fired a massive attack at Nicholas, who barely dodged it, realizing that the monster's true form was far larger and more terrifying than he ever imagined. The pressure she radiated was suffocating. Despite his massive level jump, Nicholas wasn't sure if he could actually take down a literal goddess of destruction. He activated another divine trial to analyze the situation, and after gathering the information, Nicholas decided to bet everything on his physical augmentation. Nicholas charged through the agonizing pain, but she swatted him away like he was nothing but a bothersome fly. He was launched far and got hurt to the point of actually dropping his sword in pain. He couldn't understand the sharp, biting pain he was feeling, which made it impossible for him to focus any real strength into his next attack. The situation was looking grim, so the system began calculating his only chance at survival. Now I know what you're thinking, but the system's final calculation for victory was actually completely insane, suggesting he use his most dangerous physical enhancement. Even while dazed, he knew he couldn't hesitate. Time was running out for everyone he cared about. Nicholas ignited the ability anyway, and Morana watched in horror as his entire body burst into literal flames. Barely holding onto his sanity, he lunged forward and sliced the monster's massive form clean in two. The system confirmed the target was annihilated, marking the completion of his most dangerous divine trial yet. Points flooded his interface. Every bit of damage and every tactical achievement was being calculated in real time. He secured a rank double alpha evaluation, reflecting his combat mastery and granting him a massive wave of experience. With 11 million points gained, Nicholas instantly jumped up by 600 levels in a single moment. Meanwhile, Sebastian was making a secret call, demanding an immediate transport to move the items he had stolen. Looking at Lady Alina unconscious on the cold ground, he gained 3 new powerful abilities. Mental mapping, weakness detection, and enhanced insight flooded his mind, making the knight's head spin from the sudden influx of legendary information. The side effects of the augmentation hit hard. He coughed up blood and collapsed, his body finally breaking down. Sudden, overwhelming agony rushed through his veins, leaving him wondering what was happening to his soul. He checked his status and saw his body was failing, realizing the toxicity in his blood from that power had reached absolutely lethal, unbelievable levels. No wonder his vision was blurring, and his head was pounding so hard. Using the maximum limit of his physical fortification was a mistake he couldn't repeat. Nicholas noticed a strange, spectral gas drifting away from the monster's remains, heading deep into the shadows. That meant the Serpent Queen might still be clinging to life, despite her body being destroyed. The gas was returning to her main body, and he remembered he needed level 4,000 to win. He couldn't face her true form yet. First, he had to drag himself up and stop 𝒂𝒔. He had to end this. Then he spotted his communication crystal lying on the floor. He saw the artifact Morana had tried to send through the magic circle and decided to grab it. As Nicholas started running, he activated his mental mapping and discovered a truth that chilled his blood. He wasn't on the 5th floor at all. He was actually at the bottom of level 20. He was on level 20, way deeper than his old record on level 12. You and I know it's about to get wild. He never expected this fall, plummeting to the 20th floor after Seela's attacked. Using his divine trial, watch what happens next. Arthur verified he was now on the 18th floor, while his target was moving away on the 25th. Contact was estimated in 45 minutes, but the Great Serpent's main body was closing in fast. The system calculates the level needed to crush his foe and starts measuring the experience points required. Arthur searched for a way through this when a warning alert flashed. Multiple high-level monsters were lurking just ahead. Beasts suddenly swarmed him, and Arthur realized he had absolutely no time to waste on any of this. For now, he has no choice but to keep grinding and increasing his levels as fast as possible. He uses his skills to analyze the new enemy, scanning for any hidden weaknesses he can exploit. Arthur watches closely, refining his senses to find the perfect opening for a precise, lethal strike. He slays 3 goat demons, and his total evaluation points increase further. Successfully completing the divine trial, Arthur sees his levels rise again, and the agonizing pain in his broken body only intensifies, becoming even worse than before. Spinning around, he finds a 3-headed hellhound approaching and quickly unleashes a powerful blast of water magic. The attack lands perfectly, killing the beast with a lightning-fast move that registers as a massive critical hit. But that was only one head. It is still alive. Arthur decides that his focus will be to kill enemies and push forward no matter what. He aims to perfect his divine trial ability until it is fully complete. Arthur's points are tallied, and with all the analysis added, he gains 70,000 experience points in total. This massive boost pushes him to level 3,000 and unlocks a rare new skill called double slash. Arthur is shocked because sword techniques are incredibly rare, but he realizes those goat demon monsters are far from finished. They look the same as before, but they might have called for even more reinforcements this time. The monsters growl without being understood, and Arthur feels his stamina finally reaching its absolute limit. Remembering Alara, he knew he couldn't stop now. If he fell here, it would be the end. Now pay attention here, because something massive is about to crawl out of the dark. The massive thing appearing behind him wasn't just a monster. It was a gargantuan creature with glowing red eyes. It attacks Arthur directly, knocking him back as he wonders why golems are lurking down in these depths. Maybe the monsters are helping each other. Several goat demons use magic circles to target the protagonist. Arthur has no time to react and nearly takes a direct hit from the sudden, chaotic attacks. Grabbed by the leg while falling, he is pulled into a magic circle and realizes he must hurry to do something. As the strategy begins to formulate, several goat demons gather to launch another coordinated attack while he is trapped. Arthur sees the calculations are finally finished, and his next action is fully optimized. He uses double slash to strike his foes, killing the nearby monsters while the others continue attacking from afar. Arthur keeps attacking relentlessly, and his evaluation points continue to pile up and accumulate. As he expected, pushing his abilities to the limit leaves him exhausted and in immense pain. Okay, Let's pause and see what is happening to Alara while Arthur fights for his life. She woke up after a long time, and 𝒉𝒔 asks if she finally regained consciousness, laughing because his charm only worked at the very start. He was impressed that her willpower resisted for such a long time. It was easier when there were more women around. 𝒉𝒔 grabs her face and replies that he really does not like her one bit. Those eyes of hers were the eyes of someone who believed that Arthur was still alive. He couldn't understand it, since she told the weak Arthur he wasn't worthy of being an explorer, and she also abandoned him back then. Alara replies that after a certain incident, Arthur became obsessed with strength and began risking his life daily. That is why she told him to quit being an explorer before he got seriously hurt. Still, Alara says it was his own choice to continue down that dangerous path. He was living his life on his own terms, and she believed Arthur wouldn't die easily. She wanted to believe he was still alive somewhere. Meanwhile, Arthur faces the golem with water magic. Once again, the trial is complete. He gains 9 million experience points. And trust me, you and I are going to want to see the crazy reunion coming next. Trust me, you'll want to see Alaric hit the 600th rank. With that milestone achieved, Alaric's divine remolding begins right now. He has no idea what remolding actually means yet, but his body feels extremely heavy, like his very soul is about to shatter into a million jagged pieces. Waking from that agonizing pain, he realizes he is completely surrounded by even more monsters. Those archfiends are chanting in tongues, while Alaric notices a strange magical barrier currently protecting him from their reach. The trial of the ancients restarts as Alaric reaches for his blade, while the fiends unleash their first deadly strike. He sprints to dodge the incoming magic, successfully parrying every single blow aimed at his chest with perfect precision once again. But these archfiends aren't finished yet. Their relentless assault just keeps coming. He unleashes his twin strike, clashing steel against sorcery in a desperate struggle to survive. His defense score climbs higher and higher. 30 minutes pass, and the points just keep on piling up. Alaric is hitting his limit after so much defending. At this rate, the physical strain will break him. Trapped by the barrier, he cannot launch direct counterattacks against the monsters like he did before. His muscles are screaming in pure agony, and he can feel his reaction time finally slipping against the relentless enemy onslaught. He knows he is in serious trouble, but then, the trial of the ancients is finally over. The scores are finally tallied, granting him another 8 million points. Alaric's rank surges forward in just a few minutes. Now at rank 3800, he remembers Lady Morana's warning. Pay attention here, because we only have 200 ranks left to reach the goal. Once he hits that mark, Alaric will undergo his final remolding. He still lacks answers about the process, and Morana notes how drained he looks after such a brutal fight. Alaric turns just in time to face Morana's true physical form. After all, he really kept the lady waiting. She confirms this is her prime body. This is the real Morana. He wonders if she is even human anymore. She claims to be tired from all that traveling, but Alaric wonders how she managed to cross 5 whole castle floors in just a few short minutes. She steps through the barrier, approaching him. He left a massive trail of destruction behind him, but Alaric suddenly realizes something terrifying. Every single monster he fought so far was actually under her command. Morana asks if he is even paying attention to her. But Alaric is completely distracted, staring intently at the woman's right arm in total confusion. He was certain he had severed that limb, yet there it is, repaired. Does she have the power to regenerate? Morana notices his gaze and laughs it off. Losing a piece of herself was annoying, but Alaric did manage to draw actual, royal blood from her body. She would love to execute him right now, but first, she wants him to return what belongs to her. Alaric asks what she means, and Morana snaps. She has no patience for him playing the part of a fool. He knows exactly what she wants. Alaric remembers the strange magic artifact he grabbed from the ground, that glowing enchanted communication stone he found during the chaos. Alaric asks if he can leave if he simply returns the item, but Morana makes it clear that is not how this works. She admits he is stronger than before, but he is still not at the rank required to defeat her. Now, you and I can see Alaric realizes he still stands no chance. After everything, he still needs 200 more ranks to even stand on her level. At this pace, however, his body will shatter from the sheer agony before he ever reaches that goal. Morana threatens his life if he refuses, just as the trial restarts once more. Alaric truly has no more time left to waste now. It is now or never. The magical interface calculates his experience and begins optimizing his every single movement. He strikes with his twin blade. Morana blocks, but a shallow cut opens on her cheek. Now she is ready to kill him. Morana calls his ultimate attack pathetic. Meanwhile, Alaric gains 13 million experience points, and his rank explodes upward once again. He hits rank 4,000, and the divine remolding begins instantly. A massive explosion rocks the room, leaving Morana startled and confused by the sudden surge of raw energy. Alaric emerges with a completely evolved physique, and she wonders what kind of terrifying, divine pressure is now radiating from him. The pain is gone, replaced by a heightened perception that goes far beyond any normal human limits. Morana orders her monsters to strike while they still have a chance, and they all fire their magic at once. Alaric effortlessly dances through the magical carnage, and trust me, you and I just witnessed a brand new warrior god being born on this battlefield. All right, you and I are about to see if Alaric can survive this nightmare. He should have been overwhelmed, but that is when Alaric activated the oracle for a second time. The analysis finished instantly. Every detail on his enemy was now calculated. Seraphina was a true disaster-class threat with 12 guardians under her command. His new ability let him land safely despite the incoming barrage. Alaric lunged for the beasts, and Seraphina stood stunned because, in a mere heartbeat, his speed surged. He cut down every monster in his path effortlessly, demonstrating an evolved double-slash technique that had finally reached its absolute peak form. His attack power simply doubled. He slaughtered the monsters before them, leaving the creatures zero chance to even strike back. His data system updated as the battle shifted, and finally, Alaric could face Seraphina one-on-one without any distractions. She claimed to see openings in his stance, specifically targeting his back as she prepared to strike. But Seraphina's mystic shot only grazed his shoulder as he pivoted and dashed to the side. Furious, Seraphina hissed and launched a homing water spell that chased Alaric across the battlefield. Suddenly, she saw Alaric appear in multiple places at once, splitting into several perfect physical afterimages. Blinded by this new phantom ability, Seraphina was hit by a barrage from every possible direction. And just like that, Alaric brought her down. The oracle confirmed that the high-tier target was successfully silenced. He paused to catch his breath, stunned that he had actually finished them all alone. Looking at the absolute carnage behind him, he began to wonder what kind of monster he was becoming. The memory of those lethal slashes felt heavy in his mind. He could vaguely recall his movements, but the details were hazy. Even defeated, Seraphina was still a high-ranking horror. It was honestly sickening to even look at her. The crisis was averted through his awakening, but now Alaric needed to flee before his luck ran out. Suddenly, a chilling laugh echoed out. She never imagined being defeated so easily, even in her nightmares. When Alaric turned around, he faced a sight that defied all logic. The monster's shattered body was glowing as she continued to speak. Pay attention here, because this is where the rules of the fight completely change as she mocks his strength. It was time to finish him with her full army. Nobody had turned the tables on her like this. The oracle warned that a massive surge of magic was now far exceeding the previous threat level. Alaric watched in horror as her broken body reassembled itself while she laughed at his shock. Her minions were ready too, and she released a blinding explosion of light that forced him to look away. When he looked back, Seraphina was standing there, but now she was surrounded by a horde of new monsters. He could not believe such a terrifying force had been hidden inside her this entire time. I know what you are thinking. How is he supposed to win against those monsters now? She laughed, seeing that he was frozen in pure disbelief. No one expected this outcome. Alaric had forced her to get serious, and now she was not holding anything back. Seraphina commanded her tails to strike, and the beasts flew toward Alaric in an instant. He barely evaded the first strike, relying on his divine eye to track the incoming chaos. The system struggled to update the new data on her true form, and those 6 lethal tails. Each tail had unique powers. Individually, they were weaker than Seraphina, but together, they kept Alaric on the run. He sprinted as the number of monsters grew, darting from side to side just to stay alive. Despite his evolution, Alaric was not strong enough to handle this horde alone. Under the pressure, a monster bit into him, and he fell. His body was sent flying, and he lost his sword in the chaos, barely standing back up. Against a coordinated assault like this, there was simply no way for him to counter. The oracle confirmed heavy blood loss from the deep puncture wound in the knight's right shoulder. Now you and I have to wonder, does he have an ace left? All right, you and I are about to see Sir 𝒂𝒧𝒔 hit rock bottom as he loses everything in an instant. Lady Seraphina orders her beasts to tear him apart once and for all. He struggles to find a way to stop her, trapped in a nightmare far worse than how this started. Every choice feels like a death sentence. He desperately searches for any small opening, any clue that might lead him to victory. That peak state, that absolute power he once wielded, had vanished completely. If he tried to force that ability to awaken again, it could be his end. It might turn the tide, but the cost would be his own life, tearing his body to pieces in the process. By activating the divine trial, he could calculate the perfect moves to survive this impossible onslaught. Sir 𝒂𝒧𝒧𝒃 grits his teeth and decides to gamble it all on one path. Raw energy surges from within, threatening to rip him apart as he moves. As the beast lunges, 𝒂𝒂𝒧𝒃 dodges with impossible speed, striking back at the exact same moment. Gripping his blade tight, he slams the steel right against the creature's jagged teeth. The beast doesn't budge. Even now, its sheer, overwhelming strength is enough to make any knight tremble. He is being crushed by this monstrous force. In the end, even awakening his true power seems to have achieved absolutely nothing. 𝒂𝒂𝒧𝒃 is fading. His muscles are screaming in agony while his vision spins wildly out of control. A blast of dragon fire hits him square in the chest, followed by a brutal chain of attacks that sends him flying across the chamber. The pressure is too much. His damage reduction skill kicks in, but even that divine protection isn't enough to stop the pain. It is a miracle he is still breathing. He barely dodges a fatal blow, escaping death by the narrowest of margins. Seeing him survive, Seraphina screams in pure rage. She demands to know why he's still playing games, barking orders for her pets to finish the job. 𝒂𝒂𝒧𝒃 racks his brain. There has to be a strategy, some clever trick he can use to turn this around. Now watch closely, because Seraphina notices something weird while 𝒂𝒂𝒧𝒃 just stands there frozen. He notices one beast has stopped fighting. It is just standing there, strangely licking the knight's blood off its own claws. Soon, the other monsters are distracted too. Seraphina watches in confusion, unable to explain this sudden behavior. Something is seriously wrong with every single one of her beasts. Then it hits her. Her monsters are acting completely drunk after tasting a single drop of 𝒂𝒂𝒧𝒃's blood. They aren't threatening anymore. They've turned into docile, clumsy pets, leaving the villainess absolutely stunned and speechless. They all have these vacant, glazed-over eyes. That is when our hero finally realizes what is actually going on here. His physical fortification skill had a bizarre side effect. It sent his internal alcohol levels through the absolute roof. He was fighting in a drunken berserker state, making his very blood as potent as the strongest ale. 𝒂𝒂𝒧𝒃 finally gets it. These creatures are completely wasted just from a tiny taste of his empowered blood. You and I both know the legends of beasts addicted to spirits, and it seems 𝒂𝒂𝒧𝒃 just found his winning move. He lets out a smirk, while Seraphina screams at her useless monsters to get up and start fighting. She tries to snap them out of it, but these drunken idiots are way too far gone to listen. They should know better from past battles, yet here they are, acting like fools at the most critical moment. Seraphina turns around and gasps. 𝒆𝒍𝒔 is actually cutting his own arm to drink his own potent blood. If these beasts crave this liquid gold so much, he is more than happy to offer them one last round. Terrified, she asks what he is doing. That is when 𝒆𝒍𝒔 triggers his enhanced fortification, pushing his power to the absolute limit. He challenges the drunken beasts to come at him all at once, so he can finally end this pathetic farce. The monsters lunge forward, but 𝒆𝒍𝒔 knows he has more than enough blood to keep this advantage going until the end. The first beast strikes, tastes his blood, and immediately collapses into a drunken stupor just as he predicted. Before he can capitalize on the opening, a wave of intense agony ripples through his body, making him flinch hard. Another beast charges, and he barely rolls away, scrambling up its massive scales to avoid being crushed. Our brave hero shouts to the monsters, inviting them to come and feast on even more of his intoxicating blood. The entire pack is now stumbling around drunk. He mocks them, asking if they are enjoying the party while they are completely distracted. This is his only chance. He cannot afford to waste this opening and must strike now. But trust me, you and I knew it wasn't over. Seraphina stabs him from behind, punishing his one fatal hesitation. All right, you and I are about to dive into a showdown where being predictable is a death sentence. Earlier, she tried that exact same trick, striking him from the shadows when he was most vulnerable. Now Arthur has read her movements, standing ready for the incoming assault. Shaken, she wonders what his plan is, but he lunges forward because he knows she desires this clash too. He forces her to consume his blood, ignoring her desperate pleas to stop this madness until the very end. Weak and dazed, she begs him to cease, and finally, Arthur releases his grip and retreats a few steps. The Serpent Queen struggles to rise, fully aware that her situation has become dire in this broken state. Despite her stupor, she continues her threats, while Arthur feels his own consciousness starting to slip away rapidly. He resolves to fight until his last breath, even as the darkness threatens to take him at any moment. He prepares for a final slash while she commands her beasts to move, baffled by their sudden, motionless state. Instead of attacking, they simply let out a heavy sigh and lie down, staying completely still there. Now, pay attention here, because Arthur is about to push his physical limits one last time. She looks back in sheer terror, realizing that at this rate, none of them will survive the night. Without a hint of hesitation, he cuts through the monsters, ending their lives once and for all. And with that, Arthur breaks his limits again, reaching level 6,000 in an instant. Meanwhile, Helena was still spending all that time locked away in that room when she saw someone finally open the door. A young girl appeared, and Helena questioned why Alice was there in this place. Alice simply smiles and remarks that it has been quite a long time since their last encounter. She came on Lord Sebastian's orders, making Helena wonder if Alice had fallen for his dark enchantments. When Alice questions her words, Helena's temper flares as she raises her voice in pure frustration. She demands to know if Sebastian is manipulating her and begs her friend to break free from him. Alice snaps back, telling her to stop insulting Sebastian because he was the one who saved her. She claims Arthur is dead, explaining that Sebastian was the only one there to comfort her broken heart. You and I both see it. Alice's mind is completely clouded by dark sorcery and hidden resentment. It turns out Alice had been harboring deep jealousy toward Helena, leaving the lady completely speechless. Alice continues to vent, confessing how much she truly despised both Helena and Arthur for their past actions. Helena is lost in confusion, remembering a time when they were all close and shared everything together. She begins to weep, having always loved Alice and viewed her as a precious younger sister. That is when Sebastian enters, mockingly apologizing for interrupting such a heavy and serious conversation. Alice greets him with joy and he takes her face, suggesting she should try harder to befriend Helena. She offers a quick apology, claiming she simply got a bit too emotional during their conversation. Sebastian then turns to Helena, telling her to be kind to her lovely little sister, just as he is. But Helena screams at him, demanding to know why he is using his foul sorcery for such evil. He casually blames her, stating it was her own stubbornness that led them to this wretched point. His charms never worked on Helena, who asks what his endgame is, but he just shrugs it off. He reveals the Royal Guild contacted him to lead the extermination team against the Serpent Queen herself. He plans to force both Alice and Helena onto his team, ensuring they cooperate with his grand design. That was his reason for being there, holding her with a chilling sense of possession. Alice giggles at his touch, while Helena watches the disgusting scene unfold with a stomach full of bile. Sebastian smiles, declaring Helena will join him regardless, as he has no intention of letting Alice go. Back on the field, Arthur's vitality has dropped to 5%, leaving him on the brink of death. Despite the state of his body, he feels alive with only 137 seconds left. He hasn't faded yet, finding strange comfort in the warmth of human skin touching him at the end. Unaware his head rests on the Queen's lap, the system warns him that 90 seconds remain. The Queen knows the end is near, while Arthur regrets not finishing her when he had the chance. And trust me, you and I just learned that true demons never die so easily. All right, you and I are about to see a knight's worst enemy become his only hope. It was a cruel thing to say, but she admits that Alaric shocked them when defeat seemed absolute. She smiles, claiming they would finally accept him as one of their own. With only 30 seconds left until his inevitable death, the knight remained utterly clueless about her dark plan, which clearly started to grate on her nerves as she hated repeating herself. 10 seconds until Alaric's death. The Lady of the Abyss feels that things were truly reaching a breaking point. Now watch closely, because this is where things get wild. She pulls a blade from a ritual circle, and while smiling, she plunges it deep into Alaric's chest to complete the dark ritual immediately. The lady offers her knightly greetings to her master as the system begins its ethereal observation. The synchronization between Alaric and the Abyss Lady begins to surge violently. The system monitors this soul bond and forces the connection even deeper between them. New abilities awaken, and his strength skyrockets through the bond. When Alaric finally opens his eyes and sits up in the dark, he sees one of those hideous beasts right beside him and bolts upright in absolute terror. But the creature just watches him peacefully. Alaric frantically searches for his blade, but it is nowhere to be found. His legendary sword had vanished completely, and as he reaches out in the dark, he ended up touching something he definitely should not have, realizing that the Lady of the Abyss was lying right beside him. He panics, wondering how on earth his sworn enemy ended up sharing a bed with him. Worst of all, he was completely naked, leaving him utterly speechless in such a bizarre and embarrassing situation. Saying nothing, Alaric scrambles to grab his gear and escape this nightmare as fast as possible. Suddenly, a small beast nuzzles against him, forcing him to whisper a desperate plea for it to stop. The noise wakes the lady, who starts complaining until she sees the ridiculous scene unfolding before her. She is thrilled to see her master has finally awoken. Later, he finds some new garments, and she compliments how well they suit him. Even if those clothes were technically stolen from travelers passing through the forbidden crypts. Regardless, the garments were enchanted with magical protection to serve her new lord. Alaric asks for an explanation. He did not understand why he was still alive after such a devastating battle in the crypts. The demon lady suddenly realizes she had completely forgotten to explain the situation to him. Let's pause for a second. This forbidden soul contract is what ties their lives together in a deep and dangerous way, and trust me, you and I need to watch this part very carefully. Now the knight realizes that his memories of the afterlife were not just some fevered dream. She truly had pierced his chest after all. He fears he has turned into a monster himself, but she denies it, explaining that her master is merely connected to her now. Alaric stares at her, asking what that was even supposed to mean. She reflects on how to show him, and asks the knight to close his eyes and command her to lend him her sight. Though he did not fully understand, Alaric agreed and asked what her real name was. The girl finally realized she had never properly introduced herself despite always being called the Beast. Her true name was actually 𝒂𝒔𝒕𝒆𝒓. He does as she asks, closing his eyes and ordering her to share her vision with him. As the vision shifts, 𝒂𝒔𝒕𝒆𝒓 asks how it feels to see himself through the eyes of a demon. He admits it is incredibly strange, but he finally understands the power she mentioned. Alaric realizes he can now wield 𝒂𝒂𝒕𝒆𝒓's forbidden arts, and she laughs, impressed by his quick wit. His attributes had increased massively because of the bond, so she decides to explain the finer details of their new connection to him. Meanwhile, the royal order was holding a secret council on the 3rd floor of the Great Hall. Lord Alistair, a high-ranking commander of the royal order, says he gathered everyone to discuss the final subjugation of the great beast. Lately, beast attacks had been surging in the city crypts, where the demon lady was spotted. They were barely holding back the chaos and managing the terror left in the wake of the attacks. Even with the guards and investigators involved, the situation was spiraling out of control. The damage to the cities was so significant that rebuilding had begun. They now knew the beast possessed 6 different forms. And that's where we leave it. Trust me, you and I are going to want to see what happens next. Let's dive in the monster's secret weakness, high-strength spirits. Past scouts found that injecting the beast with high-strength spirits made it vulnerable to massive, earth-shattering damage. It turns out monsters get hammered just like us. It seemed the ancient legend of the serpent was actually true. Lord Stirling explained they partnered with the great breweries to secure the massive concentration of alcohol they needed. Preparations began instantly, with the ambush set deep within the 4th level of the royal crypts. The plan was to lure the Serpent King there and get him drunk enough for the final kill. Sir Thorn declared that every knight must stand united to bring the great worm down. They needed a champion for the front lines. Then, a man burst in, claiming the glory for himself. It was Lord 𝒆𝒔, swaggering into the room with a whole squad of ladies behind him. Stirling knew his reputation, but politely questioned if this noble brat could actually handle such a dangerous situation. 𝒆𝒔 just laughed, bragging that his elite team was more than ready to handle anything the dungeon threw at them. Lord Stirling was stunned, not just because 𝒆𝒔 brought a team, but because Lady Alara herself had joined them. Meanwhile, deep in the vaults, Kayleigh was ferrying Julian through the underground river in a magical water bubble. Julian couldn't believe how handy magic was. No wonder he'd been losing every single fight until now. It explained how she'd found him so fast, even across several massive levels of the crypt. Using the waterways was her secret. Kayleigh just smirked, knowing exactly how much she was impressing him right now. Magic like this was a game changer, but man, it really drained her energy fast. She usually just turned into a dragon, so Julian asked why she wasn't doing that same exact thing right now. Pay attention here. This is where the conversation takes a very awkward turn. Kayleigh hesitated, making Julian realize he'd stepped on a landmine. Though Julian found it odd. She quickly changed the subject to explain exactly why they were practically sprinting out of these dungeon vaults. Suddenly, she started calling him Master Julian, which made him feel incredibly strange. Kayleigh just shrugged, saying of course she'd use that title now that he was officially her master. Despite his loud protests, she kept pushing for answers, knowing he was in a massive rush for something clearly urgent. Julian finally confessed. They were running because they had to save Lady Alara from Lord 𝒆𝒔's twisted, dirty schemes. The name made Kayleigh ask if that girl was his secret lover. He went bright red, claiming she was just someone he admired. The demon laughed and turned away without explaining a thing. Julian didn't care. He was only focused on whether he could actually face 𝒆𝒔 in his current state. Back at the main plaza, on the crypt's 4th level, Dozens of knights gathered with barrels of spirits on the 4th floor. Even elites like Lady Alara were there working hard. Lord Sterling approached her, asking for a private moment so they could talk. And she agreed. He thanked her for helping with the Serpent King's hunt alongside all of them this time. It was quite rare for a young prodigy to debut as a knight, while she was still finishing her high studies. Alara had reached the gold rank in record time, becoming a legend among the common folk for her actions. Lady Beatrice warned him to stop fanboying, and the commander quickly apologized for his sudden excitement. He then asked why she joined Cedric's squad, given the man's notoriously rotten reputation in court. Alara froze, remembering Cedric's cruel threats about what would happen if she ever dared to leave him behind. Alara had seen the humiliation he caused, and she knew she couldn't leave Alice behind. She fell into a grim silence. Now let's pause. We all know that's a lie. She just lied and said she'd known Cedric for a very long time. Internally, she vowed to save Alice from his clutches no matter the cost. She glanced at Cedric and his hypnotized harem, including Alice. If only Julian were here, everything would be different. Cedric flashed a wicked, evil grin when he noticed he was being watched. He knew he was hurting her by acting like that. She wouldn't break. She just needed a single chance to shatter the charm spell he'd cast with his dark magic. Then, out of nowhere, a scout suddenly screamed that the great worm was finally approaching the plaza. On the 4th floor, 15 dark humanoid shapes were detected by the lookouts, closing in incredibly fast. Julian felt the tremors too. He told Kaylee to stop. "Trust me, things are about to explode." "Stick with me." She didn't understand, but his command was absolute. Hazel stopped dead, making Silas complain about the sudden halt, but Arthur snapped that he ordered her to do it. Silas warns that scouts are closing in, and it looks like they are hunting for Hazel specifically. She is totally lost, so he hands over the device she recognizes as one of her own lost belongings. Hazel then sees on the screen that they seem to be her children in a Royal Crusade news report. Realizing her own kin are now her enemies, she finally asks what their next move should be. Silas suggests tracking them first, using his divine sight to scout the area and gather intel. But the moment he taps into the system power to peer through the veil, he is stunned to see Helena and Sterling together, convinced that Silas had been killed long ago, just as planned. He wonders what happened during his absence, and Hazel cannot help but agree with his suspicions. After all, she knew Sterling was the one who put Silas through that living nightmare. Sterling was not liked, yet the lady his mentor admired was by his side, which Silas found hilarious. Meanwhile, Sterling tells Helena they were entrusted with working on the front lines, and she must step up, while Lady Alara mocks her for being incredibly careless. Sterling just laughs along at the insult, showing his true colors as a complete snake. Alara does not care, laughing as she apologizes to Helena, who remains silent and wishes she could break his charm, but she simply wasn't any good at that magic. For now, Helena knew she had to keep a very close eye on Alara. Watch closely, because fighting Arthur is her only chance, until a sudden scream shatters the air. Everyone stops as a scout uses his lenses to spot a massive heat source coming their way. Their leader, Commander Ashbury, steps forward, asking if the beast Arthur has finally been spotted. Instead, a swarm of monsters appears, chasing a lone woman who is running for her life. Ashbury shouts for his knights to move, declaring the girl's safety their absolute top priority. He orders them to save her while Sterling handles Arthur, and the knights all shout in agreement. Silas agrees with the commander's orders, even though he finds the man's noble lectures a total pain. Sterling rallies his squad for glory, as they all charge straight toward the oncoming horde. The mages unleash their power, and Sterling smugly orders the beautiful Helena to join the attack too. With no other choice, she reluctantly agrees to his demands and prepares her sword for battle. She moves to intercept Arthur when the fleeing woman collapses in terror, screaming that she is scared. Helena rushes in, yelling that it is dangerous, and swings her blade to slay the beast. The monster is sent flying, and the woman gasps her thanks for being saved just in time. The other knights run to help the woman, saying they would leave the monsters to Helena while they take care of her, and the first step of the plan was a total success. Hazel realizes this is the lady Silas admired, and honestly, you and I can see why. As the lady passes Sterling, he is struck by her beauty and immediately plans to charm her later. Watching this, Hazel grumbles to herself about how Sterling truly has zero class or honor. She laughs internally, hoping they can move on quickly now that everyone is finally together. Besides, she stops using her tails as bait since Helena's monster was suddenly retreating. The beast swerves, flying straight at Sterling and the girls, leaving them paralyzed with sudden fear and confusion. Sterling spins around in a panic, seeing the massive creature diving directly toward him. He tries to run, but a massive explosion rocks the ground and throws him off. He can't fathom why it's targeting him, so he activates his gravity magic to seal its movements immediately. But his jaw drops in shock when his magic is completely nullified the moment it's cast. Hazel is behind this, laughing as she uses her secret magic to keep the pressure on. Sterling hits the dirt, screaming at the girls to get over there and protect him right now. Under his hypnotic spell, they obey, but Helena is the one who manages to step out first. And that's where we leave it. Helena takes the full hit and collapses. Hazel whispers in shock, knowing she was a fool for jumping in front to take the hit. She knew her master would be furious about this sacrifice. Elinor collapsed while little Alara watched on, completely lost and confused. All right, you and I are about to see why Elinor is willing to throw her life away for her disciples. Suddenly, Alara is gripped by Silas's dark hypnosis again, commanding her to stop wasting her precious mana like that. Elinor watches in horror as the girl writhes, poisoned by that night commander's disgusting magic acting against her. Instead, Silas barks at his senior to finish the serpent, or Alara would pay a deadly price for it. Arthur screams for him to stop that madness, while Hazel just sighs. She realizes the situation is too lethal, and she will have to leave the rest to him. As she sends a final message, she summons a spirit, but a blur of steel slashes the enemies first. Elinor freezes when she sees our hero approaching. Stunned, she recognizes that legendary face immediately as he walks closer. She gasps, asking if it is really him. Arthur just smiles and rushes over as she hits the dirt. She says she is fine, making him exhale in relief, but she still wonders why he is even here. Now watch closely here. Even Elinor notices that the vibe around Arthur has shifted completely. After all, he just one-shotted the Great Serpent, leaving her absolutely speechless by what she just witnessed. Arthur says a lot has happened since they last met, then asks why she came. Elinor admits she wanted his old gear back. Then her eyes drift toward Silas, who is still sprawled on the ground. Arthur stares him down after their long time apart, and Silas finally stands up, remembering his old rival. Terrified, Silas stutters, asking how he could possibly be alive after being trapped in that dungeon for so long. Arthur gets the confusion. Since Silas tried to kill him, a lot changed inside those dark dungeon walls. Elinor spins around, her heart racing at those words. She always suspected something was off, but Silas was even more twisted than she had ever imagined. The noble laughs, mocking her for these accusations when he supposedly has not done a single thing wrong. Pointing at Arthur, he sneers, asking what a level 100 weakling could possibly do in this place. Even if he killed a serpent by luck, Silas tells him not to get cocky about his supposed strength. You and I know that is a big mistake. Never disrespect our protagonist's true power like that. Arthur's aura explodes, paralyzing every knight nearby. Even Silas freezes, unable to process the pressure. That crushing weight. Lady Alice is paralyzed upon seeing such raw, terrifying energy. This is a massive leap from before. She wonders how his stats could skyrocket in just a few days. Her divine analysis shows he has reached level 6,000, with stats that are literally off the charts. The two men lock eyes until Arthur starts walking forward, scaring Silas, who cannot understand this guy. Alice asks if he is okay, since she literally saw him tremble in fear. That sends Silas into a rage, screaming for her silence. He strikes the girl, worrying Alina, but Arthur is the one truly shocked because he does not recognize Alara. Silas stands tall and laughs at how pathetic their little reunion has become after all this time. They reunite, yet he does not even recognize her face. The girl on the ground stays silent while Arthur asks if Silas kept her under hypnosis this whole time. Silas just chuckles, telling him to check for himself since he tried the same with her idol. Arthur looks at Alina in shock, as she admits she only followed Silas because she thought Arthur died. It is a tragedy, really. Her plan failed, and she fell straight into the villain's cruel manipulations. As a high-rank adventurer, Silas could not fully break her, but he did not even mind. So, instead of Alina, he targeted her younger sister and shattered her mind with his powers. Alara is crushed by his magic again, begging him to stop, which only fuels Arthur's rage. The girl pleads for them to stop for Silas's sake, before charging at Arthur to strike him down. Stick with me, because this battle is about to get way more personal than we ever thought. Arthur is stunned by her abnormal strength. Every ounce of that power was coming from poor Alara. All right, you and I are about to see a clash that'll shake this entire kingdom to its core. The rogue knight laughs, seeing Lady Seraphina in his way, warning her that challenging him was a truly fatal mistake. Alistair tries to wake Alara, but she screams at him to shut up, claiming he never even noticed her existence anyway. Beatrice notes that her master seemed a bit overwhelmed right now, which catches him by surprise, but she knows her duty. She leaps into the fray to assist him, finally joining the battle herself. Now pay attention. Lord Malachor is shocked as Beatrice suddenly strikes with a destructive hex called the Last Gift that hits poor Alara directly. After the blast, Alara freezes, her mind finally clearing as she looks around in complete and utter confusion. Alistair asks if she is finally returning to her senses, and she looks up at him, stunned to see him. Beatrice feels relieved that she finally broke free from Malachor's manipulation, and Alara agrees, standing up to grab her sword once more. It looked like she really wanted to say something important to him, which makes Beatrice chuckle as she approaches, seeing the hex has been successfully shattered by her own power. Alistair realizes she used a destructive force to cancel out the dark enchantment placed upon her. As Beatrice confirms it, Malachor demands to know what just happened there, not understanding a single thing about the situation. But they ignore him while Beatrice clings to her master, hoping for a bit of praise for her hard work. Alistair grumbles about her being so clingy, but she is satisfied enough with a promise for later. Alara watches them, wondering who this beautiful, mysterious girl could possibly be. Before an explanation comes, she mentions that if it were Seraphina, she might have just given up entirely. That is when Alara's power suddenly explodes, startling even Alistair with its raw force. She did not care about the chaos, though, because she had admired him with all her heart since the very beginning. Ever since their academy days. Back when someone had almost attacked her, but he went after the man and saved her life. She had been interested in him ever since he first entered the academy. Alistair always watched over her, encouraging her even when she felt like quitting her nightly training. However, he was always looking at Lady Seraphina with those very same eyes. When she heard rumors that he had died, she felt a massive, cold emptiness grow inside her heart afterward. Seeing him now with Beatrice makes her scream, wondering why it had to be a girl like that. The girl was nearly hit, but Alistair threw himself in front to shield her from Alara's mindless rage. Alara would never forgive him for that, which only made Malachor laugh as his dark hex activated and intensified all of her negative emotions. It made her feelings grow so intense that they became a true curse of the heart, which only served to make Alistair even more furious. Yet the arrogant noble keeps laughing in his usual superior way. You and I both know, it is time to be more violent. The dark power acts on Alara, who begs him to stop, and Alistair realizes he would end up hurting her if he tried to fight back in this situation. He wonders what to do until Seraphina suddenly charges at Malachar, attacking him and shattering the enchanted accessory he was using. Caught completely off guard by her speed, the villain leaps back, putting distance between them once more. While Seraphina prepares to strike again, he screams at her to stop because he has had enough. Malachar raises his voice, shouting that she is just a woman and he is a man who refuses to lose. Then he unleashes his hexing ability again, this time with a far more terrifying intensity than before. Elara is instantly seized by the dark power, while Malachar commands her to surrender her entire soul to him. Seeing her suffer while that monster laughs, 𝒆𝒍𝒔 demands to know why he is hurting the poor girl this way. He tries to help but cannot reach her. Malachar continues to poison her mind with pure hatred, fueling her envy and shame until his dark energy starts overflowing from her very being. He wants to drain everything she has just so he can become even more powerful. Under Malachar's hypnosis, Elara agrees to offer her soul to him as his dark power invades her body, leaving 𝒆𝒍𝒔 in shock. Beatrice comments that Malachar is truly the worst kind of man in existence, a disgusting monster who uses negative emotions to make power his own while slowly intending to break Elara's spirit. Malachar feels the stolen power rushing through his veins, looking quite pleased with himself. Lady Seraphina is the first to charge in, desperate to put an end to this madness. He instantly counters with his gravity magic, stopping her mid-air and leaving her stunned by his overwhelming strength. Both were elite knights, but Malachar was superior in raw strength. Even so, she had no intention of falling here. And that's where we leave it for now, trust me. This war is just getting started. All right, you and I are about to see a villain get exactly what he deserves after Silas claims Alinar is at fault. His gravity magic intensifies, crushing the ground around them until Arthur steps in to shield his friend from the impact. He tells Silas to stand down for insulting Alinar and for using Althea's heart as a tool for his own twisted games. He was preying on his own allies, and for that, Arthur would never show this man an ounce of forgiveness. Silas just scoffs at the speech. To him, Arthur was just another delusional knight playing at being a grand hero. He calls Arthur a sickening hypocrite, claiming the hero's righteous attitude makes him want to vomit. Silas cranks up the pressure to break him, but even with his enhanced gravity arts, Arthur doesn't even flinch at the weight. Looking him dead in the eye, Arthur asks what kind of monster he has truly become after all this time. Now watch this part closely. Silas is about to lose his mind and unleash even more of his power. He activates extreme high gravity, pouring every drop of his mana into one final, crushing blow against the legendary knight. But Arthur stands perfectly still. Silas is horrified. His ultimate move didn't leave so much as a single scratch. Freya watches her master with pride, telling the villain to give up because none of his tricks will ever work. Driven mad with rage, Silas screams and lunges forward to strike Althea in a desperate final act. Alinar screams for him to stop, but the villain decides he will take something precious from Arthur right before his eyes. Suddenly, Arthur vanishes and reappears behind him, landing a devastating sword strike while calling him nothing but a common villain. Silas's screams echo through the dungeon floor as he collapses, clutching his mangled hand in absolute, soul-crushing agony. Freya and the other knights just stand there, watching him crawl without making a single attempt to help him. Silas looks up in shock, demanding to know how a mere level 100 knight could ever possess such terrifying strength. Arthur towers over him and reveals the truth. He is actually level 6,000 now. Silas is frozen in fear as Arthur grabs him by the collar like he is nothing. Arthur tosses the man aside and orders Freya to use her healing magic on the wretch. She agrees through their mental link, knowing they can't let him die just yet, as they communicate silently amidst the chaos. Time passes, and the injured soldiers are treated, including the girls who had been trapped under Silas's control for so long. Althea breaks down in tears, begging Alinar to forgive her for all the terrible things she was forced to say. Alinar just smiles kindly, holding her hand and telling her to focus on resting and not to worry anymore. She looks at Arthur with the same warmth, and he nods, knowing that everything will be fine after some time. Althea keeps sobbing her apologies as the guards carry her away to a safer place. The group watches as the wounded are cleared out, and Arthur asks Alina if she is doing okay. She turns to him with a relieved smile, safe at last. It is the same kind look he remembers from when they were children. She had always been his inspiration, the one person he always looked up to since they were very young. Seeing them finally at peace, Freya can't help but laugh at how bright the mood has become. Let's pause for a second. This is where Arthur's luck finally starts to turn around as Lord Julian arrives with some massive news. He reports that they took down 3 of the Hydra's heads, allowing them to finally capture Sela's thanks to Arthur's help. All he wanted was to contact the Knights Guild immediately. The group heads back to base, and the soldiers can't stop praising Arthur for slaying the Hydra so easily. Honestly, it was a bit much, and even our hero didn't know how to handle all that sudden flattery. Freya whispers to him mentally, reminding him that she helped out too and expects a nice reward later. He agrees to it just as Julian asks for his name again, and Arthur finally introduces himself to the leader. The name clicks instantly. He was the famous knight who first reached level 100 in the kingdom. The soldiers start whispering, remembering how everyone said reaching that level was supposed to be impossible. They couldn't believe a weakling like him did it, especially with enough power to crush the great Hydra without trying. Alina shuts them down quickly, and Julian realizes his men were being incredibly rude to their young savior. Still, they bow their heads in respect, thanking him for everything. Julian offers a formal reward from the subjugation team, but Freya's voice rings in Arthur's head, demanding something specific. And trust me, you and I are going to love what happens next. All right, you and I are about to see how Alistair handles these loot-obsessed beasts. Later on, Alistair finally steps out of the vault and stretches after his long grind. Alara praises his hard work, but the woman he admires stayed behind. Alina stayed with the royal guards to help clear the remaining monsters from the battlefield. The demon asks if that's fine, and he simply nods. She's just that kind of selfless person, so Alistair decides he wants to become strong enough to support her journey. That's when Lady Alice approaches, asking our main character if he has a moment to talk. The next morning, he and Alara head to the Adventurers Guild, located in the capital's busy district. While walking, Alara complains to her master about being stuck on a difficult level in her new enchanted game. Looking at the tablet, Alistair explains she just needs to spend gold or wait a day. She's totally confused by the term recharge. He tells her she literally just needs more real money. Still lost, she asks what this mysterious thing called a paid gacha is supposed to be. He explains the basics. You pay gold for a random chance at a new hero or rare item. If luck is on her side, she'll get elite gear. If not, she's stuck with absolute garbage. Either way, the game has plenty of goals for her to chase. Alara is furious. If you don't spend a fortune, you can't even get stronger or have fun. He has to agree because pay-to-win games are brutal. Now she's worried about her empty pockets. Alistair considers her plight and mentions she could open a bank account or find other ways. She realizes she needs to work for gold, maybe even become an adventurer like him. But right now, Alara stands out way too much, even with that oversized hood hiding her. Even though he ignored the crowds before, they both worked closely with the Royal Guard recently. Plenty of people saw her true form, and rumors spread fast. Now pay attention, because the media is hunting for a scoop. Alistair knows her identity getting leaked could be a total disaster for them both. Then there was the massive damage to the city. They absolutely can't let anyone discover she's actually the calamity-level Drake, 𝑭𝒂𝒔𝒕𝒆𝒓. Suddenly, Alara snaps at him for not listening. He quickly apologizes for getting lost in his head. She asks if he's worrying like their first meeting, then laughs, announcing she's joining the guild too. This catches Alistair totally off guard. He tries to explain that her situation makes things incredibly complicated. With the guild, even accept a monster like her. Alara suggests he could just force them to listen with his power, but Alistair insists that's not how it works. The Drake just smiles. She's determined to make bank so she can roll for more gacha pulls. Alistair notes she's been playing non-stop since yesterday. She just pouts because she refuses to put the game down. I know what you're thinking. They're being watched. Someone's eyes are locked on them from the rooftops. Nobody makes a move, though, so they keep walking toward the guild headquarters. Upon arrival, Alice greets them with a smile. Alistair introduces Alara as nothing more than a close friend. The girl asks if she can call herself his loyal servant instead, making him beg her to stop. Alice just chuckles as they head inside. Alistair asks why they were summoned so urgently today. She promises to explain in the office and leads them to the elevator, reminding him of their talk yesterday. She formally introduces herself as a high-ranking official from the guild. During the recent dragon hunt, she saw just how impressive the two of them were. Alistair can't even find the words to respond properly. After she reported their deeds, the Grand Master himself demanded a personal meeting with him. Alistair is stunned, and Alice adds that Alina and Sir Gareth have also been summoned. Tomorrow would have worked, but she really needs them to follow her to the tower right now. They head inside, while Alistair wonders why a powerful manager would even care about him. Trust me, you're going to want to see this. Alara warns him. She feels an overwhelming power waiting for them upstairs. Stick with me as Lady Nicola agrees that they have been watched for long enough and warns them to be careful. Now pay attention as they reach the 48th level, where Lady Alara leads them inside the chambers to meet the High Steward as he turns to face them. We stop the story here. Trust me, you do not want to miss the next part, so hit that bell and see you soon on Tob's channel.